everybody. Thank you for coming here this morning. So yeah, I'm here to talk about the idea of basic income and how can be a foundation for society. And so I want to introduce this, first of all, so what is an unconditional basic income? What really qualifies? So really there's these certain number of qualifiers. You've got the most important part is it's unconditional. So this is something that's provided without any conditions whatsoever. There's no work requirements. It's usually based on, say, citizenship or residency. But it doesn't have to be. It can be like some other ID, some kind of verification. It's universal. It's provided to a whole group, say a whole country, a whole state, a whole city, a whole community. It's individual. It's per person. It's not per household. It targets everyone on an individual level. And it's income. It's money. It's not in-kind benefits. It's actual currency that you can use to purchase things in markets. And to be a basic income, it needs to be effectively a small, like a floor to cover your most basic needs. So Martin Luther King actually, we just had there was the 50th anniversary of his death recently. And so a lot of people don't know that he was talking about basic income before he died. Which didn't play. Oh well. So I had like an audio segment. And so Milton Friedman, if you listen to Martin Luther King talking about this, and you think, oh, well, if he's for basic income, then obviously Martin Luther King was a communist or a socialist or something. Well, Milton Friedman was also pushing for this around the same time. And this is it's important to see that basic income is really, it's kind of started here in the US. Like we were leading the way in the late 60s towards a basic income, towards guaranteeing an income. It would have set a precedent worldwide, and it started right here in the US. We were the first ones to really experiment with this idea. We experimented with negative income tax in cities across the country. We had 1,200 economists signed a petition urging Congress to enact a negative income tax. This is something that we were really close to. In fact, it's interesting that right before Nixon proposed a guaranteed income in the US, that a group of academics published a paper where they said that it would never happen in the US because, first of all, it would never pass the House or the Senate, and if it did, the president would never sign it. Unbeknownst to them, Nixon was actually working on this, and he's the one who proposed it, and it did pass the House. It just didn't pass the Senate. We were really close. So it's important to understand, what is a negative income tax? Negative income tax is essentially you start with an amount here if you're earning $0, then you essentially start with enough money to lift you above poverty. And then as you earn additional income, that amount is withdrawn at a rate that still encourages earned income. And the thing is, a lot of people don't understand, is that universal basic income is still essentially the same thing. It's just you provide a floor underneath everyone, and the clawback is actually through the income tax system. So the net transfer of money is still can be exactly the same. And so Milton Friedman saw that as well. Negative income tax and UBI are two ways of doing the same thing. It costs the same. Again, the US is so ahead of this that the closest thing in the world to a UBI is in Alaska, and it's been there since 1982. It's the Alaska dividend. And this is actually a picture of the check that was the highest check that was distributed under Sarah Palin. It was around $3,300 per person. So you multiply that by a household of 5, you're looking at $15,000. That's like the floor. So this is the only state, one of the only places in the world where everyone has this unconditional floor of a certain amount of money that they can then earn more on top of. So even though we started in the US really about this, it's really expanding quickly around the world. And this is stuff that there's already been programs, there's already a lot of research out there, and I recommend people looking into this, that there's already a lot that we know about what happens when you guarantee an income, when you actually provide this unconditionally. And there's been a lot of programs, and right now Canada is experimenting actively with this. Finland is experimenting actively. There's a 12-year experiment actually in Kenya with a full UBI from the NGO Give Directly. So there's just a lot of activity going on, and it's growing quickly. There's also UBI-inspired cryptocurrency projects as well. Really, the first one was GrantCoin, and it's been relaunched as Mana, and we'll be doing a panel about that actually right after my talk. But there's also other projects in the works along different phases along the way, and we'll see. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there for even more cryptocurrency-inspired projects. So I recommend to look at basic income, we need to see what is there to learn we have already. And it's like you put together a puzzle, because no one's really done it in full, but there are pieces of the puzzle that you can put together to learn about what happens. And so here's a list of all these things you can look into, things that we can learn from to see what the effects are. So here's a summary of these effects. And you can see there's a lot that we know that when you actually provide someone an unconditional basic income, that there's no social stigma to this. It's not the same as welfare. It's not targeting. It's fully universal. You see that primary earners spend more time job searching, and that new mothers use it as maternity leave. Birth weights increase, grades increase, hospitalization rates decline, people are healthier, crime is reduced, people eat healthier. Actually, consumption of things like alcohol slightly goes down. That's based on a meta-analysis of that. That's really strong evidence. And that cognitive functioning is improved, behavioral disorders decrease. Children actually experience increased conscientiousness and agreeableness. And savings go up and debts go down. One of the biggest effects is self-employment, that we see this over and over again, that when people have this money to start with, that they do the opposite of doing nothing. There's like a lot of people out there have a desire to actually do work that they want to do for themselves. They want to start their own business. They want to work for themselves. They don't want to work for others. And that's what you see people do to a large degree. One of the number that I mentioned here, 301%, that was in Namibia. So in the UBI experiment there, essentially the number of self-employed people quadrupled. It's a huge effect. So why does it have this effect? We could just look at it from like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that when you cover the basics, that people are actually able to pursue the work and pursue the life that actually gives them meaning. If you're just working, if you're just doing something just to earn enough money to live, then you're not engaged in the work. Only 15% of the people in the world are engaged by their work. This varies by country. In the US, only 1/3 of people are engaged by their work. So if you actually enable people to pursue the work that's most meaningful to them, that's engagement. That's full motivation. So right now, this is kind of the setup we have without a basic income. There are people who want to work that can't get work because people are working in jobs that they don't want to work in. The result could instead be a system where people are everyone who wants to work in jobs can have those jobs. And then the employers that can't find work after that because people have enough money to live, they can pay more, they can make these jobs more attractive, they can reduce the number of hours, they can make them part-time. And so more people can actually work in the ways that work best for them. And the people who aren't working in the labor market, it's not that they're not working, they could be doing unpaid work. So that's really an important part to see here, is that when we're talking about work, we gotta pull this apart. Jobs are not the same thing as work. Meaning is not the same thing as jobs and work. These are all different things. What we want to have is to either be in the center of this chart where you've got a job that is valuable work, that has meaning, but also people can have work that's entirely unpaid, that's incredibly meaningful, and UBI actually enables that. Really, this is an interesting way to think about it, is that just the drive to actually come up with enough money to live is kind of an all-encompassing thing in our minds. And if you remove that, it's not that you stop thinking or you stop doing anything. It's that all the other things that are kind of pushed in the background can now move to the foreground. And then just speaking of the ban on poverty, this is a particularly, I think, egregious example that you can see there's essentially an exponential effect of poverty on the minds of children, that you see decreased cortical surface area in children who are raised in households in poverty. And so the effect is essentially negated as soon as there's enough money. So if you lift everyone up out of poverty, you won't see that. You'll see actually minds reaching their full potential. This is a quote from Henry George. This is actually, Martin Luther King felt this was important enough to include in his book. So the fact is that the work which improves the condition of mankind, the work which extends knowledge and increases power and enriches literature and elevates thought, is not done to secure a living. It is not the work of slaves driven to their task, either by the lash of a master or by animal necessities. It's the work of men who perform it for their own sake, and not that they may get more to eat or drink or wear or display. In a state of society where want is abolished, work of this sort could be enormously increased. So everyone here should understand that the most powerful transformational work is work that's fully voluntary. And that's what UBI enables, is fully voluntary work. I think what we see around us is a civilization without a foundation. You know, think back about that chart that involved all the effects. So essentially, not having UBI is this resulting in a system where you have worse educational outcomes, unhealthy people, more crime, just all these effects that UBI would eliminate, that we know would eliminate. So I think we just need to build that foundation and make sure people start actually with an amount of currency that enables them to pursue the work that's most meaningful to them, and to actually have enough to, not have extremely stressful lives. So learn more about basic income. You know, my blog, scottsantens.com. Check out the news that's happening around the world at basicincome.org, and also the subreddit, reddit.com/r/basicincome.